Dr. Jaimie Ronchetto joins us in studio. Dr. Jaimie, how are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
So I'm doing fine, but I have to bring something up to you, and I want to see if it's just me or is it everybody. I'm so itchy, and it seems like allergy season has been extended to just all the time.
Right.
Are you experiencing that with the pets as well? Does that affect pets, like all the allergens and the itchiness and all the stuff that I'm experiencing? Does that happen right now with the pets?
It does. It absolutely does. And I'm seeing a lot of that right now. A lot of itchy dogs especially. A lot of excessive shedding, red skin, rashes, ear infections, all of that. And it all typically has an underlying allergic problem at the root of it.
What do you think? Do you think this year is because we've had a little bit more rain?
Yeah.
Do you think the allergies are coming out in full force and affecting the dogs a little bit more, or cats maybe, a little bit more than usual?
Yeah, we definitely see it more in dogs and cats, but we see some cats with allergy problems too and itchy skin. I do think it's a little bit worse this year, and it probably does have some to do with just the season that we've had with, like you said, the more rain. It's been extremely hot this entire summer, and I think that worsens some of the signs as well. We've seen more fleas this summer as well, and that probably has to do with the rain that we had, so there's more of a population of them, and flea bites are very itchy. A lot of animals are super hypersensitive to it and allergic to that. So that's been a big problem.
So let's talk a little bit about let's talk about allergies. So let's say a dog has an allergy like humans.
Yeah.
And they come in, they've been scratching, so they make their skin red. Maybe they've scratched their ear. And does something like that actually create an ear infection if they scratch too much?
It can, because the trauma of the scratching, the constant scratching, it causes abrasions to the skin, and this goes for anywhere, not just ears, but just the abrasions to the skin. It allows microorganisms, the bacteria, the yeast, to get under that skin barrier. It's no longer protective, and that's when we see the infections.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So when do we know to bring them? If we start seeing excessive scratching, I mean, is that basically our big red flag? If we're seeing our dog just scratch like we've never seen, and let's say we've looked for fleas. We can't find any fleas. We can't find any ticks. We can't. Is that our sign to bring them in, or is there a home remedy that you suggest, or both?
I would definitely recommend bringing them into the vet. That way we can do our own assessment, with you and see if there is an infection already there or starting. Hopefully we can treat that, and then we can treat the itching as well. So there's lots of options for treating the itch now. It's just finding what works best for your pet.
And everyone's different. Every pet's different, just like every human is different.
And that's an analogy I use a lot is, there's a lot of different antihistamines, for instance, that we can use for dogs, but not every dog's going to react the same way, just like every human's not going to react the same way to specific antihistamines. It's finding the one that works best.
Exactly, because I thought when I was starting getting allergies as an older human, I tried Zyrtec.
Yes.
And I thought, and it wasn't working. So I thought, maybe these aren't allergies. Maybe something else is going on. Doctor said, no, it's allergies. Just try different products. Definitely allergies. Yeah. So I finally landed on Claritin, because Claritin has 80,000 different, formulas. I finally landed on one that did work. So I guess the same happens with pets.
It's very similar, very similar. So, I find that like Benadryl, let's say, for dogs doesn't work that well for the allergy component. It would work pretty well for something more acute, like let's say a bee sting, something like that. But for your everyday allergies, I don't think it works quite as well, or it just works because it makes them a little bit drowsy, so then they're sleeping and they're not scratching.
Exactly.
That's not quite what we want.
We want to fix it. We don't want to Band-Aid it.
Yeah.
You touched upon bee sting, so let's hone in on that. How can you tell if your dog has, your dog's out in the backyard playing around
Yes.
and they get a bee sting? I'm assuming they would yelp.
Not always.
No? No?
No, not always. So most of the time, what we found is they may yelp, but typically they're out. They may have put their face in a bush and a bee was there, on the leaves, and they get stung, or they try catching them because they think they're flies, and maybe get stung in the mouth. So a lot of times they don't necessarily yelp. They'll just come in and you notice that your dog's face is starting to get puffy. So that's typically the first sign. It's usually around the muzzle and around the nose. Puffiness, swelling, maybe around the eyes, and then sometimes they'll break out into hives as well. Or depending on where they got stung, that place will swell first. So not every dog is going to really react really severely, but it can be a very dangerous situation. Just like some people are highly allergic to bees, it can get to be a very dangerous situation. So if you see that, then getting them into the vet so we can treat it would be best. So we typically treat with a couple different injections to help reduce the swelling, and we would watch them for a few hours until we know that the signs are reducing and that they're feeling better. There's no danger of cutting off the airway with, internal swelling around your throat.
Again,
area.
is it kind of different for every dog like it is for humans? I'm not allergic to bee stings, but my husband, if he gets stung, we have to get to the emergency.
Right.
So is it kind of like that way with dogs?
It is kind
as
of
well?
like that. I've found, at least in my experience, that most dogs will have some sort of reaction. It just might not lead to a life-threatening reaction, which obviously is good, but most will have the muzzle swelling and some hives that need to be treated at the very least.
And if we see that happening, obviously get to the vet as soon as possible. Don't try and treat it at home.
Right. That's always best.
Exactly. So as for humans, I think a lot of, we have to remember a lot of what we experience. So does our pet usually.
Right.
Just in a different kind of way. And basically the only thing that's different is they can't speak to us. They can't
Wouldn't
tell us.
that be so much easier if they could?
Right?
I know.
How do we fix that? How do we fix that? If they could only speak and let us know. And they speak, I guess, in their own way. They use their paws. They yelp. They cry. They kind of nudge things.
Sure.
I mean, they do their best, right?
They do their
They
best.
just weren't given that voice box. Bee stings, big problem this year,
We've seen a couple.
but
yeah,
not
we
as
usually see a few every year.
not as big as the fleas, though. Fleas.
Not as big as the fleas. I've seen a lot of fleas this season, and they're tricky. So it's sometimes, the owners have not seen them at home. They're so fast, and they're not always on your pet all the time, which is difficult. So, and especially if you have a cat that may have gotten fleas. Cats are such meticulous groomers that you're not necessarily going to see them, but you will notice the hypersensitivity reaction for sure, the excessive itching, maybe actually see some of the little bites around on the skin.
Going back to the bee stings, and we talked about fleas, bee stings, and finally a big one is snake bites.
Yes.
Again, are all snake bites, if it happens to the pet, do we rush them to the vet, or is it just the rattlesnake that we're worried about?
Well, out here, the rattlesnake is the big baddie. So that's the one that we worry about mostly. And any kind of rattlesnake bite, you should definitely seek emergency care. There are some times where you may get lucky and the rattlesnake bite is what we call a dry bite, where they didn't actually release any venom, which is always the best case scenario.
Yeah.
You have an actual bite wound, but none of the venom. But that's something that a doctor would be able to assess for you. So we always recommend just being seen right away.
Yeah, to recap, if there's ever a question, err on the side of safety.
Absolutely.
Call the vet, get the dog or cat in there to be seen. Dr. Jaimie Ronchetto, if you are looking for a veterinarian, she's only the best, period, end. At Cinema Vet, a phone number to call, it's cinemavet.com, but is there a phone number to call?
Yeah, 661-253-9300.
You're the best.